All right, welcome back for the last session. Not the least, of course. We're going to have two talks by Yale professors. The first one by Professor Mark Ashton from School of Environment. Mark is a senior dean, associate dean of the School of Forestry, and also the director of the Yale Forests. There you go.
Thank you. I heard it was the architects that were the problem, not the engineers. Well, I'm actually a practicing forester, and I'm also a professor. And I'm going to put my practicing forester hat, my registered practicing forester hat for this, because most of my work is not really related to this. It's really related entirely to understanding the regeneration dynamics and the complexity of forests from a very sort of ecological, theoretical, ecological perspective. But today I'm going to talk about wood. Wood, right? This is what we've been talking about, fiber. Well, that's, really kind of neat. Today I'm going to talk a little about, I'm going to talk outside the box. You guys, I know mostly are all engineers. I saw an enormous amount of Young's modulus and strengths and snaps and snips. Okay? Very directional. I'm going to add a little bit of complexity. Okay? I got the impression that for wood, trees are the answer. That's where wood comes from. You will see it's a little bit more complex than that. I'm going to talk about deep time, the origin of how forests have been managed historically, agrarian systems, when forests essentially became partners with agriculture 10,000 years ago. Talk about the Industrial Revolution. Wood was a core component of land transformation and sort of society's transformation from rural to urban. And then I'm going to talk a little about where we are today in a really complex world of wood. Where is the wood coming from for you? It's difficult to answer because trees are the answer for many human values. Water. The water that you guys are drinking from New Haven is 26,000 acres of filtration, surface drinking water from forests. It's a really important value, drinking water. Recreation, wildlife conservation, habitat conservation, biodiversity conservation. Where are those kinds of values coming from the forest today? We realize now in a society of sustainability that trees provide multiple values, of which wood is only one. It's a very important value, but it is only one. Sometimes it's synergistic, sometimes it's not. So that's the pathway I'm going to be talking about. And we'll hopefully get to the end, and we'll talk a little about where wood could come from with the example of the United States. So, yeah, this is land transformation. This is sort of the economic transformation of forests. Originally, pre-industrial forests provided very utilitarian values, of which wood was one. Wood was a very important source of shelter. It was a very important source of food. The forest it was. The forest was what's called swidden or transient agriculture. It was a very important sole importance from energy, heating and cooking. And then it was a source of land transformation, the use of wood to transform economies from rural to urban. And now today, it's very much a part of the cities. Most people now live in cities than rural. They are sources of service values rather than utilitarian values. But everywhere in the world, there is a place that is pre-industrial. There is a place that is being transformed in terms of a transition between rural and urban. And there's a place post-industrial. The world is really complex. temporally and spatially. So this is Swidden agriculture, shifting agriculture. It goes on still in the world today. It is the most ancient use of forests, 15,000, 16,000 years before sedentary agriculture and before state and civilizations essentially created sort of sedentary agricultural systems in tandem with agrarian. Forests essentially stopped being temporal, complex systems between agriculture and forest and became static systems in the sense of forests were in one place and agriculture in another. And that's what we have today in very intensively managed places. Other places, unintensive, where agriculture is separated from forests, and yet they're also codependent. Agrarian communities really started 8,000 years ago in land transformation, and they're still prevalent. Swidden agriculture is prevalent in certain places. Agrarian communities are prevalent in other places. If you think about Papua New Guinea, you think about the Amazon, you think about parts of Siberia, Swidden systems still go on. If you think about India, you think about large parts of Africa, you think about parts of Central America, agrarian systems still dominate today. Complex agrarian systems, these are all sort of examples of fuelwood and different dimensional wood products still being very, very important in the most relatively rudimentary aspects of utilization, not the kinds of sophisticated thinking that you guys are thinking about. Oh, can we squish the wood and dehydrate it and reform it and create new plastic? I believe that's what's going on. That's not what's going on in most parts of the world, but wood is still an incredibly important source of dimensional timber for shelter and energy, cooking, heating. And in other places, there's huge land transformations going on. There, particularly in the global south, particularly in regions where there's large areas of forest that is essentially being cut, and the capital that is generated from the forest is being transformed into urban communities, urban industrial manufacturing communities. This was North America. It went through that land transformation about 120, 150 years ago. It started. Large parts of North America transformed like this. The forests were used as a natural capital to capitalize essentially the transformation, the production of energy and dimensional wood products for manufacturing. Still is today. So there are a lot of problems that wood as a source for your interests are facing in forests. Because in many places in the world, wood is in a very unstable social circumstance with population growth, increasing settlement pressures, increasing sort of speculation of land value in forests, unbalanced, unregulated land ownerships, contradictory tax regulations that promote land conversion and deforestation from reforestation, poor monodominant markets, poor, essentially, policy reforms in terms of economic liberalization, which promote the conversion of forests to often marginal agricultural systems, and abuses of power. That's all going on. And that's not good for you guys, because you want a stable source of wood. So wood has its problems when you think about this. Where in the world can you get stable, secure, predictable markets for fiber, particularly in this unstable world of land transformation? A lot of the forest is undergoing instability. So you're looking at 1/3 of the forest, 1/3 of the land surface area was originally forest. 75% of it has essentially been transformed, deforested, and much of it has been reforested. The yellow is a signature of land that has either been transformed and lost from forest or has come back as second growth forest post-industrial land conversion. The green are those forests that remain relatively untransformed, about 25%. So all that yellow, you look at North America, you look at the United States, and it's all yellow. It's all land transformed. You look at Europe, the center of the original sort of industrial revolution, if you think about that, all yellow. Asia, Central, Northeast Asia, all yellow. It's all been either lost or transformed. What to? Well, here you can see a lot of it has remained. What you're seeing here in terms of solid green is not just trees as in forests, but it could be woody plantations, it could be oil palm, but it's perennial crops. The lighter green, where it was once forest, is a signature, or the lighter yellow, of now agriculture. Agriculture has, in many cases, replaced forest as a food resource. Intensive agriculture in many places, subsistence and agrarian agriculture in other places. 10,000 years ago, it was all green. 6 billion hectares of forest, 33 or a third of the land area. Now there's only 4 billion hectares, of which the 2 billion that has been lost are permanently lost to essentially sedentary commercialized agriculture or subsistence agriculture. But remember, 75% of the forest has actually been impacted, which means that a substantial amount has actually recovered. And that's what we work with, because it's post-industrial, it's relatively sedentary, it's relatively secure. So where is this? If you're looking at subsistence, Swidden agriculture, it's going on right here. You can see the yellow is subsistence agriculture. There's a lot of shifting. It's still going to remain in forest, but it is really ancient forms of subsistence, sort of agricultural systems embedded within forest. It goes back to forest. You clear it, you cultivate, you relinquish. It's the red that is undergoing huge land transformations right now to agricultural plantation crops. Those are the regions of instability. Those are the regions of land insecurity and tenure, weak markets, weak environmental. Africa for sure, but it's still essentially not undergone land transformation in terms of industrialization. It's Latin America and it's Southeast Asia. This is where you're essentially looking at permanent crop cultivation to oil palm, crop cultivation to soybean. And then if you're looking at the Northern Hemisphere, you can see, oops, excuse me, let me go back. You can see this is essentially where sustainable forestry is practiced, the green. And if it's not sustainable forestry in some form or fashion where it goes back to forest after it's been cut for a wood product, it's some kind of fire. I know there's a couple of Canadians in here. Saskatchewan, maybe there's only one. Maybe, oh no, there's a couple. But they're all, never mind, I shouldn't make rude remarks. But you recognize when you're looking at a lot of Canada, we're breathing Canada right now. Smoke, there's a lot of fire. A lot of it's related to big crown fires that are somewhat interacting with changes in climate. So there's both disturbance regimes that are renewable, hopefully it'll come back to forest, and there are disturbance regimes that are anthropogenic, in which people are purposefully cutting forest down. And that's the green and the brown. It's remaining as forest, but it's remaining as forest as dynamic forest. So there are, if you're looking at wood products from an engineering and looking at it from as a stable source of productivity, you are looking at sources, and this is where investments are coming through. You know, if you're a TIMO or a timber management organization, or you're investing in security and land tenure. You're investing in tax incentives. You're investing in stable planning and land use law. You're investing in diverse markets that make it economically competitive and viable to keep it as forest. And that is actually fairly rare, but that is where your wood is coming from. And it's competing with so many values. Trees are the answer for you guys, fiber, but they're also the answer for clean water. They're also the answer for biodiversity conservation. They're also the answer for recreation and open space. Trees are the answer for everything. How do you compete? I'm not sure. But let's just look at the United States. This is the last part. 2 minutes left. Land ownership in the United States. We all know that actually the United States is all essentially recovered forest that was cleared either for agriculture or for the transformation and the capitalization of the industrial system that the US now is. It's an urbanized population. 33% of the US, I keep on saying North America, to be careful of my Canadian colleagues, 33% of the United States is private family forest. That's interesting. Every single person has a different objective of why. They love their forest, but it ain't for wood. It's to sit and to look at nature, to look at wildlife, to hunt, a little source of energy, perhaps, for firewood, romantic fireplace, pretty inefficient. 20% is corporate. 31% is federal, US Forest Service, and 11% is state. The US, this is all transformed land, either cut over, as in this is old agricultural second growth forest. Much of our forest is second growth, about 150 years. Guess what? It's 150 years old because 150 years ago, it looked like that mess that you saw. It's recovered. Or it's industrial. If you go to the base, the wood basket of the United States, it is recovering, more productive, more accessible, more sort of fertile soils, but still old agricultural land of the US South. That is the wood basket of the United States. It's really productive. Here's another example. 2 more slides, don't worry. 1 more minute left. This is all where the family forests are, or the private land, the corporate. The dark purple, corporate. Industrial timberland. You can see a lot of it is in the south, along the coastal plains, some of the Piedmont, but mostly the coastal plains, and then along the western side of the Mississippi River. East Texas. I know some of you are from Texas and Clemson, I believe, and all sorts of other things. Okay. But the public land are on much more marginal. This is the western side. This is the cutover side. This is the agricultural side. Pre-settlement agrarian before the Industrial Revolution. That's little old New England. This is mostly all, as you can see, the paler color. That's the family forests. Look at Maine. Half the state is industrial. In fact, it's a weird state. 50% industrial. It's the only state that has 50% industrial, 50% small private. So There's a unique second growth forest, intimately mixed and diverse between public and cut over in the west, and private mostly in the east between corporate and family, and they occupy different places. What's interesting about the US is it's going through another transformation. Many sort of countries that are developed. They're going to service. They're looking at their forests from very different, diverse values. It used to be the prime, it still is, the major production across the world in terms of industrial roundwood because of all that U.S. southern wood basket, 18%. Sawn wood, it's fluctuated. It was 22%. In 1999, it went down to, it went up to 28%, and then in 2012, 17%. It's volatile. Pulp, volatile but declining. Though the supply is there, the demand is not. It's been undercut in terms of pulp from much more productive, fast-growing, you'll hear this, second growth forests on old agricultural lands, repeating what happened in the South in Brazil. It is the epicenter of eucalyptus. So, though the supply is absolutely there in pulpwood, it has been declining because it's been undercut by much more productive systems on 7-year rotations in Brazil. So there is a fiber source. There's also dimensional sources that perhaps are accessible, but with the essentially collapse of the market in the 2009, that's what you're looking at. 28 in 1999, 28%. 2012, that was post economic collapse. It never really recovered in terms of housing and housing construction from that market collapse. It's still recovering. So and this is my last slide, where are we going? Am I okay, timekeeper? I don't want to be an architect. Seth, take note. So if you're looking at this, if you're looking at wood supply, you could look at Maine. Maine is cut over industrial timberland, but fiber, a source of biomass, probably not dimensional. If you're looking at dimensional, one could be looking at down here, softwood. Softwood dimensional, but also pulp, fiber, because of the decline in pulp supply. If you're looking at hardwood supply, this is both family, but also corporate second growth hardwood forests. Really important potential supply if you're looking at those at hardwood as a dimensional wood product for mass timber, for example. Those are the big areas to think about. But there are also areas in the West to think about. And they are this is really operationally difficult to navigate because you're going up mountains. They're really remote. But they have been protected from fire. They're way overstocked. And there's a huge potential biomass fiber market if one can access them to thin out the small dimensional to make them more fireproof. That's what you hear about all over the Western United States, the urban-rural interface, how to essentially reduce the stocking of fire-prone forests. And the area where you might concentrate is this little sliver in terms of wood supply. That is wet, that is fast-growing, productive timberland that is of a dimensional source, and it's often private too. Weyerhaeuser, for example, or Simpson Lumber or Imperial. There are a lot of timber companies right along the fringe in terms of redwood, Douglas fir, very productive, a great source in terms of commercial saw timber. So you can see place matters, time matters. I've just given you the construct of the United States, but everywhere is different in social circumstance and stability. I'll stop there.